What's up, y'all? We are here talking about The Real Housewives of Atlanta, season 15, episode 9. I checked that before I started because I never know what episode we're on. Basically, and I clocked it. Y'all know I watched the clock as I watched the episodes. The first 36 minutes of this episode were 36 minutes. So it just wasn't really much, but I'm going to go over it really super quickly. We kind of started the episode with Marlo giving like a debrief to her friend about her date. Y'all know I already said like I like seeing Marlo with her friend or friends outside of the cast just because it makes her seem a little bit more human. She doesn't necessarily act human, but if we can see her be human in these instances, then I like to see that. I also noted that like there was something different ish with the edit that they did. Y'all know how like, or y'all may know, like on shows like the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, or even if we want to go out of the like housewives thing and we want to look at shows like Selling Sunset, when they're like transitioning in the scenes, they'll do these like flashes of like maybe the closet or like the car, or like basically trying to give glamour, like this is our setting, and this is something glamorous that's happening in this person's life, like they live a rich and fabulous life or whatever. I hope y'all get what I'm trying to get. Like there's a little essence of that there. So I say all that to say they gave that to Marlo. Like they were doing some flashes around her townhouse or whatever it is, her home or whatever. I liked that type of editing because I feel like it's very housewives esque, and I don't know, like it's very nitpicky, but obviously we've all discussed and we all know like the editing in Atlanta is a little bit weird these days. But I say all that to say I liked that, and I think that they should give more of that. Give us, you can tell a story through like little edits like that as well, right? Like you give the essence of the show by doing that. Even with Beverly Hills, I feel like a big part of what Beverly Hills is and why we feel like we get this glamour type of thing, a big part of that is that they do those like flashes of like the purses and the shopping and all that stuff. So I liked that part. Outside of that, not too much. I didn't really hear too much of what Marlo said about her date. Yeah, whatever. It was a date. Then we move on to Kenya, and she's doing her Kenya Moore hair care photo shoot. This irritated the heck out of me, honestly, because it was just so freaking long. And like, they played this clip 1,000 bajillion gajillion times. We got it in the season promo. We've gotten it in the little snippets. We got like a sneak peek on the Twitter and on the Instagram. And when we were even getting the sneak peeks, the biggest thing for me was that we were going to be seeing Cynthia. I even referenced it. I'm like, oh, we're taking a small break. We're getting a week off. And then when we come back, we get the OGs and we get to see Cynthia. And we didn't even get to see Cynthia. And it was just like the scene was so long. Like we did it for like a whole segment after we came from commercial. Then we went on commercial. Then we came back and we were still there. Now, that's not a Kenya issue. Like, I love me some Kenya. I always enjoy watching her with Brooklyn. I thought that that was super cute. I like that they rounded it back out with the Kenya Moore hair care thing because she didn't get to do the HBCU performance, so she made it into a commercial. Great. I love to see storylines come full circle. But other than that, it didn't need to be that long. Mayetta was there choreographing, and she was a part of the original performance, so that was good as well for continuity. And I like me some Mayetta. And then Kenya's man came, I guess. That felt super obligatory, super produced. Again, not necessarily a Kenya issue. I think that we all know by now that there's this push for whatever reason. It's kind of like we're still back in 1987 when this show started. Obviously, it didn't start then, but I don't remember the year it started. And there's this idea that everybody has to be in some form of a relationship or some type of situationship or whatever, or we don't want to see them on TV. I wish that that wasn't part of the formula of the show anymore, but whatever. So it felt kind of obligatory that she have, what is his name, Rory, come and make this cameo. But cool, whatever. I guess she checked that list off for Bravo or the production company or whatever the heck, but it was very unnecessary. I did make a mental note and which, you know, some foreshadowing because we've seen some stuff in the news happen now. I did make a mental note that he was there, and I think that the way Kenya had referenced it was like that he had already met Brooklyn because she's like, "Do you remember him?" or something like that. So I thought that that was interesting. Not that I know the interweavings, but we all know the drama between her and Mark, and we know Mark can get a little spicy and a little dramatic. So I had already assumed that he wouldn't like something like that. He didn't even want Brooklyn on the show. So now Brooklyn's presumably seeing this man for not a first time. So I'm like, okay, well, he's not gonna like this, but I don't care. I'm not Brooklyn's dad. It didn't bother me, but I had just made that note. And then now we know that there's an issue with Mark, you know, filing something with the court with regards to Brooklyn and the situation that happened with Marlo kicking the door with her in the hotel room 13 episodes ago. And there was some speculation that, you know, he saw this episode and he was upset, so he's filing that motion as a result. This is all alleged. I don't know. Y'all know I don't really talk news on here as of yet, so I'm not getting into that. And it's also not important to me. It's very silly and it's very corny on the part of Mark. But just saying, I made a note of that. So she's met Rory. We've met Rory. I'm probably saying his name wrong. I don't know if that's his name. I apologize. I just didn't think that was necessary. But nice man. He brought food, so we love that. Didn't get Cynthia. I didn't even watch. Like, the girls are in a uproar about that, rightfully so. And there were a ton of videos about, like, oh, Cynthia was missing. I didn't even look into it because I was so bothered by it. So I don't even want to get into it too much. I'm tired of getting into the production thing of it all, but I wanted to see Cynthia. And it's going to bother me even more because, I mean, they've already hyped it up that she's coming back in some capacity this season. It's going to bother me even more if she pops up just kind of randomly later on in the season and we didn't get this precursor as to, because it seems like this was probably her first appearance. But whatever, I'm not going to foreshadow. We'll see what happens. So, boom. At this point, we're probably at about 23 minutes. I don't know. And then we get to the other part of the thing that we were waiting for, and it is this OG dinner that's happening with Sheree. There was obviously a lot of opinions about this. I'm not going to dive too deep into it because it didn't faze me that much. I will say that, you know, they could have brought the OGs back for a number of reasons, right? Could have been shock value. It could have been some type of storyline. It could have been some type of, I don't know, foreshadowing into them coming back maybe in some capacity, maybe some type of legacy thing like they're doing with New York. And it could have also been just for nostalgic purposes, okay? Nice to see ya. I'm going to say I'm leaning more towards the latter, right? Like, I didn't think too much into it. I didn't think that the girls were coming back, the OGs were coming back to contribute anything. Like, I just thought that it was just like, oh, nice to see them. I thought that it was a nice little element. That was good enough for me. You know, I didn't have any expectations for them coming on. I didn't think that they were going to be bringing drama. I didn't think that there was going to be great conversation. I didn't think that they were going to get into the thick of it. That just wasn't a big deal to me. It was just nice to see them for me. It gave, how you been? You know what I'm saying? I will say that in terms of how long that scene lasted, because that was also pretty long. If it was going to last that long, I do wish that it had a little bit more meat in that sandwich. But however, it didn't. But I think that it had its cute moments, right? First of all, I think individually, all the ladies looked fantastic. I think that they looked great. Especially Deshawn. I struggle to say this, but like, I just feel like because we saw Lisa Wu come on last season for the party at Sheree's house, and it just seems like every time she's back on camera, she's a little bit, maybe possibly allegedly inebriated in some sort of the fashion, and it makes her come off very aggressively. Like, I know that when she used to be on the show, that was kind of her personality. Like, she was tough and rough, and she was very straightforward, which is great. But it just seems to be a lot, and it's very obvious that she may allegedly possibly be inebriated, and it just always sparks me. So that was that. But I will say on the Lisa Wu of it all, I did like that she brought up. It seemed like she was trying to work, right? Like again, I don't know that this scene was meant to provoke anything or invoke anything, but it seemed like she was trying to work, maybe, or maybe she was just trying to be a mess. And she brought up the whole house situation with Kim. So I thought that that was great. Again, I didn't have that expectation, so seeing it happen was good to me. Of course, Kim deflected. That's the Kim that we know, nothing new. So I don't think that that should have surprised anybody, but I thought that it was an interesting dynamic to see Lisa bring it up and to see them have that conversation. Again, if the scene was going to be that long now in consideration, then I wish that there would have been a little bit more meat to it. So maybe there could have been a little bit more shade thrown into it. But again, these ladies are not housewives. They don't owe us that. There's no contract saying come to work, come do that. So it didn't need to happen. The fact that it was brought up was fine for me. And what Kim said, I feel like at the end of the day, I'm even jumping ahead, but now that I'm thinking about it, at the end of the day, what that scene did was it caused people to talk. And at the very least, if Atlanta's gonna do anything, because it goes through its challenges and its ebbs and flows, if these episodes are gonna do anything, they can at least start a conversation, right? Like get the people to chatting and using the hashtag on Twitter. I would say that that's a successful episode. And I would say that that scene did that. So at the very least, it did that. I know that there was a lot of chatter about Deshaun not giving much. I haven't gone back and watched season 1 in years. I watched it like live when it first aired years ago. I can't necessarily go back and rewatch it because it's just so old and like the production value of it all. Like I just can't sit and watch that. I know it would be entertaining, but I just don't feel like it. But even back then, from what I remember, I liked Deshaun. I really did. Like, sure, she didn't give anything, and I've talked about this before. Like, give anything or like nothing happened. That's very subjective. What does that really mean? I get that she's not throwing drinks, but I like Deshaun's personality. I like the energy that she gives off on camera, and she's gorgeous. She was gorgeous back then with her little swoop and her little whatever she had going on, shoulder length hair. She was cute, and I like her now with her hair, like whatever this cut is. I'm not familiar with the lady terms for the hair, but she looks good, and I like her vibe, and she's sitting back and she's chilling. So good for her. Nice to see ya. The tea with. The editing was good though, honestly. Like if they wanted to pick up something from here and do something with the ladies, they touched on a lot of the tea with Kim, right? And even Kim was talking about like being 11 years in with Croy and how everything's so great. But then randomly, when Lisa was talking about dating, Kim was like, well, how is it out there? Just asking. And it's like, so are things good or not? So that part was cute. I think that they could pick up somewhere on there if they wanted to. It kind of gives like, when you have movies like The Hunger Games, and they have like a prequel coming out now. Like you do the whole thing of you have it, it happens, we go through all the seasons, the ebbs and the flows, and then it's like, well, we want more. So you pick something in what's already existing and you kind of make something happen based off of that. I think that that could happen with what they've done with the OGs, even if they do little stuff like that here and there. Like when Sheree even mentioned like, oh, well, we're going to be going on a trip, so maybe you guys can come. I think that that would have been fun. And they've even done stuff like that on Married to Medicine. Like they had ladies everywhere on Married to Medicine like 2 seasons ago, right? Like they went on a trip and they were doing different events and they were having older cast members come back and just play little roles here and there. Like I think stuff like that will be fine. And I think it will be fun. You can tell that they still have the energy, they still have the banter, and it gave old school Atlanta. So, for me, somebody that had no expectations going in, it was fine. A lot of people were clocking some type of shade to Nene, and a lot of people were referencing like an empty seat that was shown by production. As y'all know, I do a lot of like looking down while I'm watching the episodes, which maybe I shouldn't. So I miss a few things, and I thought about going back and watching it, but it wasn't important to me. I don't want to be a part of the Nene argument. I just don't care enough. And I think that some people have genuine arguments like, oh, that's messy, blah, blah, blah. Some people are just looking for things negative to say about Atlanta. I've had that conversation with y'all as well. So I don't want to be a part of the Nene argument. Y'all can have it. But, in the event that that did happen, I can understand the uproar. I can understand the conversation. But again, at least it started a conversation. So whatever. I do also want to note, and I tweeted this as well. It is so crazy. Like, I don't think I've ever seen any housewife change their nose mid-season. Like, the fact that Sheree's whole appearance has just changed in confessionals, like literally through the scene. Like I said, by the time this group scene ended, it had been 36 minutes. After 36 minutes, we had a whole new Sheree. And I was like, hold on, like that was a lot. So that was interesting. I'm not gonna get too much into that because I know I read the same girls every week, but it's just like they are reads. I don't think it's a me problem. It's a them problem. It's a Sheree knows problem. I apologize. I do also understand like my issue is not necessarily that Sheree isn't acknowledging that she got her nose done. It's more so I don't like it. So then we skip to like the meat of the episode, which is the Mommy Nation event. Before we even jump into the notes that I have, because I have a ton of notes for Miss Sanya and her buddies. Um, I liked this a lot. I think that we need more of this. I think this is another thing, and I hate to keep comparing to Beverly Hills because they are two totally different shows. So I'm not saying that Atlanta should pick up a lot from Beverly Hills, but there are some notes there that can be taken from a production standpoint. And I think a good thing that Beverly Hills does is they focus a lot on the charitable aspect of the ladies. And so I liked seeing this, and I liked that Sanya was doing it, and I think that is something authentic to who she is and something that she would do regardless. And it looked like a really nice event. So I'm happy that that happened, and I'm always down for a group event as well. So that was cool. I think the story of it all with Candy coming in and saying, well, I just got off the road and I came here for your event, then I got a concert tonight. And Sonya is just like, oh, I'm so happy that you did that. But then, you know, throwing a bit of shade in the confessional, like, well, we know Candy has missed some events. I'll say this. I'm going to play the both sides of it because I always try to. Fun shade. Okay, it wasn't nothing super negative or anything like that, but I think it lends itself to more of an argument because we know what's been going on with the Candy of it all this season, and we know what's been going on with the flip-flop of the Sanya of it all this season. So I think that it's interesting to hear Sanya acknowledge, like, oh, thank you, Candy. Like you went out of your way to be here, right? Like Candy didn't have to be there. If she wanted to miss the rest of the season, she really could clock that T. But she's here. You know what I'm saying? So I think it was interesting to see her acknowledge that, but then also try to like throw a jab in there. Again, it's not an extreme jab, but I'm just saying. And I feel like it just shows how contradictory the brain power of Sheree, Marlo, and Sanya can be, because it's like, how can you acknowledge that she's gone out of her way to do this? And that's a big deal, right? Like, she's doing shows. She really don't have to be here for this, right? So that's a big deal. So, how can you really acknowledge that, but then your overall argument about Candy is just kind of like that she doesn't show up as a friend and she doesn't really do anything. She's kind of not considerate of other people. Those are my words, right? But I'm just saying that's kind of the general argument that they've been trying to put forth about her. So I'm just trying to say that shows the contradiction there. And then that gets me more into the Sanya of it all. Here are my notes for her. When I watch these episodes, I thoroughly enjoy having Sanya's sister around because I don't get much continuity as it involves Sanya ever, right? Like, I think that the things that occur with Sanya and for her storyline, they're very fleeting, right? Like, they happen and then they're gone, right? Like, we never really get a good follow-up to them. The baby storyline, yes, right? And then now we know that Sanya's pregnant, so that's great storyline. The family thing, sure, but it just has so many gaps in it, right? Like it'll happen and then something else will happen and then we're over here. So there's just not much consistency as it pertains to Sanya as a character. So that adds to the argument for Sanya being a flip flop as well, right? Because then you have to think, okay, is this the editing or is this Sanya? And I'm leaning more towards that is Sanya. And I'm going to tell you why. Particularly, I'm starting to put pieces together because nobody else is doing it for me. So I'm listening to Sanya's sister. Nothing that she ever says about Sanya changes. You know, it's never flat out like a title or an adjective that she'll give Sanya, but she'll make complaints about Sanya. And if you listen and read between the lines, you'll understand what she's saying. And I think it clicked a lot more for me this episode. And I enjoy seeing it. I don't want to see sisters beef or anything like that. And I don't think it's going to be a big beef for them. I actually like how they worked it out and they were very straight with each other and they gave their points and Sanya got emotional and she apologized and her sister's like, no problem, don't apologize, I didn't want you to cry. I thought that was great. But I enjoy seeing them being real with each other and just getting the real tea from somebody that obviously really knows Sanya, right? That's her sister. And I think that what we're being able to pick up on now is that Sanya is inconsistent and she may also be a bit inconsiderate. And I know that that's a heavy word, and I don't look at it as Sanya's a malicious person at all. I don't think that. I think that she's a really nice person from what I see. But what I pick up is that Sanya has a lot going on and she's wanting to work and hustle and move forward. So a lot of focus is on Sanya, right? So I don't think that she really considers the people around her because she's trying to get herself off the ground. And I can understand. I think that in trying to get herself off the ground and do her stuff, she feels like she's going to bring those people with her because they work with her and they're her family. I understand that. But also, you have to consider other people's perspective and how they're receiving you. You know what I'm saying? And I think Sanya just kind of moves and shakes to the beat of Sanya's own drum. And she's just doing things, but she's not taking a second to look at how it's affecting other people. Last season, you know, with her husband, he's just like, well, you're not around, I want to have another child. And she's like, well, I'm trying to do me. Okay, I can see both sides of that, right? But still, it's like, are you considering your husband now that I'm thinking about it? But it could also be, is he considering you? But I'm talking about the Sanya thing of it all that I pieced together now. So with the husband thing, now this season where, we've heard from her parents, mom and dad, we've heard from her sister, and now we've heard from her, we've heard from her sister's husband as well. They all are saying the same thing at the end of the day, and it just feels like Sanya makes these very hasty decisions, and she seems to require a lot from people, and at the last minute. And it just seems like she knows these people are, her sister said it, she knows these people are gonna come through for her, and she knows she can depend on these people. But then it's just like, but what are we getting from you, right? And I think that it's a highlight for me in the group dynamic because I think a big issue that Marlo has is that Marlo is inconsiderate. And I think a big issue that Sanya and Sheree have is that they are inconsiderate. So that's why it's interesting to me that the three of them click so well, and it makes a little bit more sense because they, in my opinion, seem to be the more selfish out of the bunch. And I think that they consider their happenings and their feelings and their perspective much more than they look at others. Again, I'm not saying that it's a malicious thing. I don't think it's anything malicious about any of them. It's not even Marlo, but there's a sense of selfishness there, and it's like you have your perspective, right? You have your feelings. You're experiencing things, right? But are you really looking outside of yourself to see how how other people have been experiencing it? And I think that the three of them think similarly, so it's easy for them. That's not necessarily a consideration, right? Like, you can say like, well, Sanya and Sheree give Marlo the benefit of the doubt. That's because it's not much of a consideration or a reach from them, because they think similarly. So I think that they have the same thought process as Marlo, so it's easy for them to kind of bond in that way. There's no consideration there though. Whereas I don't see them, Candy, right? Like, I don't see them giving that same consideration to Candy. So, not that any of that occurred this episode, but in just listening to her sister and seeing the conflict with Sanya's sister, it's something that really clicked for me with Sanya's character, because I am trying to figure it out. And even calling her a flip flop, it's a cheap shot and it's very general. So it's like, what does that even mean? Like, what are you really trying to say? So I was interested in analyzing it more. I always am interested in analyzing the character more, and like what's going to help them mesh more into the group. And I think I'm understanding that the issue with Sanya is, yes, she does flip flop, but I think it comes from a place of like, she's just not a consistent person. She doesn't really land anywhere as it pertains to other people and their experience and their perspective. It's more so like, where is Sanya at? And as a person, Sanya is somebody that's just kind of fleeting. Like, she's kind of all over the place. Like, there's a lot of things happening, so it's hard for her to kind of sit with herself and realize what's going on and what's happening. I hope that that made sense, but that's just something that really hit me as I was watching the episode. And I even tweeted about it. Like, I really enjoy having Sanya's sister around, because I also understand, like, from a viewer perspective, it's polarizing. I think Sanya is a polarizing character. So some people are going to feel one way, some people are going to feel another. But I tend to feel like, for the sake of defending Sanya, some people come up with very irrational arguments about her, and they don't really connect for me. So when I'm listening to people that actually know her and are related to her and have grown up with her, like her sister, I tend to give more credit to those opinions, because they make a little bit more sense. And like I said, she's not giving more of a pointed opinion as we would on the Twitter, but what she's saying, I'm putting those pieces together, and that's what I'm gathering. So that's Miss Sonia for us, and I think that that's why she connects with Marlo and Sheree very well. We get back to the event, and I mean, the only thing that I could really note more about the event, and as it pertains to those three, I I'll go back a little bit. Even with the event, like, similar argument, right? Like, she asked Kenya at the last minute to host the the auction part of it. I couldn't get that word out. She asked Kenya to host the auction part of it, and Kenya was readily like, "Sure, girl, I'll do it, no problem." And I thought that that was great. And same thing with the whole like consideration of Candy. Like, consider the fact that Kenya did do this for you, and she did not have to do that for you, right? That doesn't mean that you owe her anything. You have to kiss her ass or anything, but like, just keep that in the back of your head when you're walking around with this shared opinion that you have with Marlo and Sheree about Kenya, and the shared opinion that you have about Candy, with Marlo and Sheree, right? Like, just think about those things. Keep those in mind. That's all I want. Give me some sense of consistency as it pertains to some type of thought process and how you come up with these opinions about these ladies. That's all I want from Sanya. Give me some consistency, right? I thought that was good that Kenya, was readily open to help her. I don't think that it was good that she was late. I don't think we got enough information as to why she was late. Not that there's an excuse, but they did touch on it, and that felt very fleeting. But I'm glad it didn't become a beef. But I do agree that Kenya should not have been over 2 hours late. Of course, heck not. But like, when she came, I liked that she had the energy that like, oh no girl, we're gonna raise more than $50,000. We're gonna raise 100. I loved that. You know what I'm saying? Like, put the BS aside, right? I thought the charity was very interesting. The cause that they were supporting. I thought that that was amazing. I loved that. I just think that that was a great event. I really do. And I wish that we would have got some more BTS and some more inner workings of it, even with the conflict type stuff, like the Sanya and her sister stuff, and like the why Kenya was late stuff. I would have loved to see more about that, just to kind of round it out more, right? But fine, and I will say, like, the biggest interesting part, and I wish we can get some acknowledgement on here too, and some clear perspective, because it's like, Sanya, the ladies that you act like don't support you, Kenya was hosting the auction and trying to get double the money you wanted to get, and you even had pushback on that. And Candy, who you side with Marlo on and say that she doesn't really consider other people as well, she was the first one to offer up money. You know what I'm saying? And she was the one really pushing for them to bid $7,000. So she was the first one to bid money, and your homegirls, Marlo and Sheree, were the last two. And obviously, there's tea out there now that Sheree was complaining at the table, and she's like, "Well, I have a new granddaughter," and blah 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 blah. But those are your homegirls, right? And it's like, are y'all not taking a step back and considering the argument that y'all are making about Candy, that she doesn't do anything for any other people? Y'all been talking about it since last season, and she's sitting here doing what y'all are supposed to be doing for your homegirl. It's just like, where's the consideration there? Like, turn it on. Like, why are the pieces not connecting? You know what I'm saying? But at the end of the day, as I always say, there are certain people that have a commitment to misunderstanding, and they just have a commitment to being adversarial as it pertains to Candy. But I wish that they could be a little bit more rational, and say, oh, well, Candy was more readily open to helping and bid for this charity than Sheree and Marlo was. That's just a fact at the end of the day. And I wish that we could just get that out there, but we ain't. Even to go back on the whole like Sanya shade thing, I know that there was talk where it was just like, because I already said like she threw shade, but it wasn't bad shade. But there was talk where it's like, well, why does Sanya get criticized for the shade? Again, consistency, right? Sanya's gonna act like, oh, we're all good in person. She's going to throw shade in the confessional. And then we're going to get to the reunion where we need to rehash the whole thing. And she's not going to keep that same energy. She just doesn't. And to her credit, I guess I would say Sanya doesn't seem like a confrontational person, which is great. Kudos to her. But if you're going to talk it, then you need to be about it, right? Like, you need to say it when it's time to say it. In the confessional, sure, that's a time to say it, but when we're at the reunion and you need to deliver and really talk about those feelings, I don't feel like Sanya is going to be able to address how she really feels and articulate it. And again, that lends itself to the consistency argument. She's not a consistent person. At the end of the day, I thought it was a great event. There was also chatter about why was she award the Mommy of the Year award to Sheree and not her mother. I didn't feel too strongly about that either. I thought about it. I considered it as I was watching the episode. I definitely did. But I don't feel super strong about it. I hope that we get more into like the back and forth between her and her sister. And then even speaking of sisters, I skipped this on accident. But I've said this already. I do enjoy the storyline about Drew and her sister, and I'm loving to hear more about that. And it was really, really, really cool to hear about Drew's sister's resume. And I think that even adds more color to Drew's story, right? Because it seems like, okay, so her sister has this amazing resume. She was managing Drew, obviously, probably very influential in Drew's career because she has the experience, but then she kind of gets ousted or banned by Ralph. So now who's there kind of helping Drew with her career, right? And Drew said like, well, I'm managing myself. And then we've heard Ralph say that he was help managing or whatever he was doing. So it adds more color to that story where it's like, was there some type of, I hate to use the word sabotage, but was there some type of like negative effect, with that whole of her sister missing, and now it's just her and Ralph trying to manage a career, and they don't have the same experience that Drew's sister have. So, I thought that was good. So all in all, the episode was definitely all over the place. If the first 36 minutes versus the last 24 definitely felt like separate episodes and there were two different things happening, the story of that episode didn't really round itself. But I do feel like certain things that happened in this episode gave me more color and more context to different things, and I think it gave me some continuity, and I'm ready to move forward with the next episode. So that was that. I did like the episode. I think I would probably give it like a 7 out of 10. And yeah, that's all I got. So I will see y'all in the next one.